The other thing is I dragged my wife here tonight because she heard it was at the cable cuts. The first time we've ever been here when the lights were on. I thought this was a big affair. And the only thing I'll say, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, is 10 or so years ago I was asked to comment whether or not I was in favor of gay marriage. It was on a radio program, and I said yes. And frankly, nobody really said anything about it. It sort of just went away. And at that time, you can imagine even in 10 years what changes have happened, as Frank and I and others have pointed out. To me, although it's not generally accepted within the party, unfortunately, at least not yet, I think it's basically a civil right. And I'm interested to hear some discussion tonight about, I have a question that I'd like to pose at some point as to whether or not there is some incremental legislation that people are in favor of, because I've always taken a position that it's sort of all or nothing, that you can't be separate and equal. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong in that. I'd like to get some feedback on that particular issue. I know that whenever I've had a couple of events sort of similar to this, a little smaller, and the discussion invariably comes around to whether or not we would be better with incremental progress towards the final goal of full equality. I'm not sure I believe that, and when the issue of incremental progress comes up, Ken Fish usually gets up and screams and yells at me that I don't know what I'm talking about and I should be quiet. So he's promised me he's not going to do that to me tonight. So I'm here to answer any questions, and I do just want to candidly say that everything that I may say is not uniformly, and I don't want to overstate that, but I do want to be careful of my position and that it's not uniformly shared. As two of these gentlemen have already pointed out, there are people, admittedly, within my own party who I have had very spirited debates with privately, probably more so than publicly on this particular issue, but to me, I think it's a fairly basic one and really should be less complicated than some people make it. I have, on a personal note, a sister who I'm very proud of, who is gay and is married and went to Massachusetts and been married and has two beautiful young children. You know, my wife and I were walking over here tonight and cars was screaming down North Main Street. My law office is only about a block from here. And it occurred to me walking in here that if the car that screamed by us had hit me, it would have set a whole chain of events in place for my wife that she would have, I don't know if she would have been happy I got hit, but it would have set a whole chain of events in place that she would have had access to, from hospital access to records to medical personnel to you name it, insurance, a whole list, a whole litany of issues. And if my sister were here and the same thing happened to her, her wife would not have had the benefit of those same rights. And that just doesn't make much sense to me as a lawyer or as a person, or as a chairman of the Democratic Party.
My name is Stephen Brown. I'm Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union in Rhode Island. As Bill suggested, we generally enjoy suing people, but it's nice to just be on a panel and talk. There are obvious reasons why the ACLU is involved in this issue and strongly supports the right of same-sex marriage. I think I'm very proud of the Rhode Island ACLU and its work on GLBT issues over the years and decades, and I think the optimism I have on this issue is perhaps best demonstrated by a case that the Rhode Island ACLU filed back in 1976, over 30 years ago. And it was a case called Towards a Gay Bicentennial Commission versus McQueenie. And that may be a funny name for a case, but it's a very important legal principle. It might be hard for most of the people here, young people here, to imagine this, but back in 1976, there was an attempt by this group to have a gay pride parade. And in conjunction with the bicentennial year of the founding of this country, this whole notion of equal rights for all. And the city of Providence, and in particular the Providence police chief, a man named McQueenie, denied the permit on the grounds that this was immoral activity and there were dangers to public safety if this march were allowed to take place. They contacted the ACLU. We filed a lawsuit on their behalf. In a very important decision, the judge ruled that this commission had the right to organize this parade and march through property streets. And the reason it's so important is because I think it shows just how much things can and do change over time. Nobody thinks twice about the enormous parade that now takes place every year at the same time. And I think the writing is on the wall, whatever anybody on the other side might think. It clearly is only a matter of time the way people now think about the Gay Pride Parade and how silly and ridiculous it was that we might have tried to ban a parade 30 years ago. We'll think the same thing some years from now about how silly it was that we tried to ban same-sex marriages.
I'm happy to be sitting on the far left of the table. I'm the Reverend Gene Dishlewski. I'm pastor of Riverside Congregational United Church of Christ. I am the chairperson of the Religious Coalition for Marriage Equality, representing at this point, I think, 120 clergy from various denominations who are in support of same-sex marriage. I think there's about 13 denominations. My denomination is in favor of same-gender marriage. My congregation is, and I personally believe that same-sex marriage is, in fact, a part of God's plan for humanity.
Thank you all for being here this evening. I'd like to start out with a question that I think was alluded to by Representative Berry and Representative Handy. Rhode Island is out ahead of the pack on orientation or on legislation to protect sexual orientation. Why do you think there's been a disconnect between sexual orientation protections and gender discrimination protections, and not on marriage or relationship recognition?
I'd speak to that. Every most Catholic state in the country, I think that probably starts people in place. I actually don't think I have a lot of friends that are Catholic that are very supportive of the legislation, the constituents that come up with me specifically pointed out. So I don't think it's something I'm cutting right in sense, but I think that plays a role in policymakers' positions as opposed to the state itself. I think that a lot of the state representatives and senators come from backgrounds that probably starts to evolve. Unfortunately, sometimes that'd be my
Let me read, I'm not going to tell you who sent this letter because I got it yesterday, but in terms of what Art said, I've gotten some interesting mail for the last month or so. And this is from an individual who we all know here. Again, I'm not going to identify him because I don't know if the letter was public, but he's a member of my party and has been an elected official. And he says to me that I read your September release in which you call Governor Kucheri a sectarian and extremist. That was a little strong.
Great.
But as far as I can tell, this is nothing, and this is a sample of and I'm going to tell you why I'm citing some minutes. As far as I can tell, this is nothing but a derogatory way of saying that the governor is an Orthodox Roman Catholic when it comes to the question of homosexuality. Let me make a few observations about you. It violates the American spirit of religious tolerance, especially religious tolerance in politics. You are applying a religious test to the governor and anybody who agrees with him. 2, your expression is deeply insulting to anyone who, like the governor, is an Orthodox Catholic and agrees with the Catholic teachings on homosexuality. You are doing at the state level what so many Democrats have done at the national level, namely, driving Orthodox Catholics out of the Democratic Party, which would seem to be what I shouldn't be doing as the chairman of the party. But anyway, he says that I vividly remember Sundays when I was a young man and your parents would walk down the center aisle of St. Joseph's Church on Walcott Street in Pawtucket with their well-dressed brood of young children. And my mother liked this sentence, but not the rest of the letter. You were, without question, the most handsome family in the parish.